When you dare to share, you break the silence. When you dare to share, you speak your truth. When you dare to share, you use the full strength of your voice. When you dare to share, it brings opportunity to own your story. So tell it, be heard, and at the same time, your sharing is someone else's learning, inspiration, motivation, empowerment, and hope. There's always an element to each of our stories that remains a secret. For some, we feel it's a dirty little secret. Dare to share your untold story exposes these secrets in a welcoming and positive way. I encourage each of you out there to dare yourself to share what is yours to tell. When we dare, it is the courage to do something really important. Let this be a vow to each and every single one of us that we take risk, we brave, confront, and face what is, while inspiring and empowering all communities. So let's break that silence and tap into mental beauty. This is Salima Jadavji, your podcast host, a practicing social worker, and your mental wellness connoisseur. Welcome to the Dare to Share Your Untold Story podcast, episode number 86, A Shifted Narrative, Flourishing Flowers Beneath the Trenches. To all my fellow listeners, before we get started, I'm just dropping in a note to give you a heads up that this podcast might be emotionally triggering for you. We do invite guests onto the show who share openly about extremely difficult life moments with exposure and impact of what the struggles have been like. The intensity of each episode could have a variable impact on your emotional and mental well-being based on your own personal story. If at any point the topic becomes uncomfortable or upsetting to you in any way, please do not pressure yourself to listen. Instead, be kind to yourself, do some self-care, and perhaps give another episode a try. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing our courageous and daring guest, Karima Jaffer, who is here to share for a second round. Karima is an innovator and spark builder and knowledge enthusiast. She is completing a Master of Social Work degree at the University of Toronto. Karima has a business background and hopes to apply the knowledge learned from her Master of Social Work degree to do effective work around diversity, equity, and inclusion. She is currently working as a research associate with the University of Toronto, where she focuses on Indigenous child welfare topics. Social work is a part of her DNA, and there are multiple reasons why she got drawn to the field. Outside of her professional experiences, Karima enjoys being near water and nature overall. She is a visual artist and writes poetry. As an individual who self-identifies from a mixed race, ethnic, and faith background, Karima has spent the last year embarking on a journey to learn about her ancestors, intergenerational healing, and focusing towards being a borderline personality disorder and bipolar 1 advocate. She loves house music and has a guilty pleasure of going down Spotify music rabbit holes. Well, hello, Karima.
Hi, Salima.
Welcome to the Dare to Share Your Untold Story podcast.
Hi, it's so good to be back.
I love it. I love that you are back. I am delighted to have you as a guest on the show today. And as you know, I am grateful for your willingness to be here today for another round to tell even more of your story. I've said this before. It's humbling to encounter guests like yourself who allow me to tap into their vulnerabilities and draw on their strength, insight, and inspiration, which all gets shared in this space. I very much appreciate that you're here for a second time to do this all over again with me. It's incredibly important we continue to take a stance together to help break barriers of mental stigma.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Yeah. Karima, even though we have you for a second time, as a refresher, this podcast is all about bringing forward untold stories that people go through, whether directly about a mental health struggle or something else. And we know that no matter what the story, there is impact on one's own mental health in some way, which remains tucked away. And this platform serves in a way to break the barriers of mental stigma that have been conditioned in our society. So today, together, My hopeful mission is for both of us to continue to encourage people to share and tell what individuals typically have reservations to express. And of course, I bring forward this trend. It's called the mental beauty rethink. Now, Karima, I know you've answered this before, but right now, in this moment, this very moment, tell us what sparks for you when you hear the phrase, the mental beauty rethink.
Today, now that you re-asked me this question after not being on your show for a few years, and also, I guess, growing in different ways, I feel like mental beauty has been a very interesting topic into my life, especially when it comes to just being able to connect with yourself and seeing yourself as, not from a scarcity mindset, but also from an abundance mindset. And when I say this, I mean like having core beliefs, core values that are enhancing your ability to attract all your desires that, make you that person who is allowed to have that power in their life and not being, I guess, influenced by outer forces, to be hard on yourself and being able to, I guess, feel okay having a heart and being vulnerable. And I feel like it's all connected to that. And now in my life, now that I see mental beauty in a different way, it's just really shifted, I guess, my direction and my strategy and excelling into my journey and my journey of, like, I guess, self-love and self-hope and this realm of mental health. I hope this makes sense.
It does. And I really like how you've really taken this phrase and you've integrated an interpretation but you've been able to apply it to yourself, like specifically connecting it to where you see it fit and based on your mindset shifting. And I really like your angle on the abundance mindset and how that shows up for you and how you connect it to mental beauty and how you connect that to your core values and how you connect that to the direction where you're headed with clarity. It's really beautiful.
Yeah, the last time I spoke to you, I was fresh out of a episode. It was my second hospitalization for psychosis and mania. I guess what really shifted this mindset for me was my relationship to my spiritual realm and how that connects to, like, my ability to foster not just, I guess, like my recovery, but also foster a new path for myself so that I don't see these diagnoses as my identity.
Sure. Right. Wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing that, Karima. Thank you.
No, it's okay. Thanks for asking.
All right, Karima, the time has come. Let's journey forward to another round of diving in. Are you ready?
Do I have a choice?
You always have a choice.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. Well, I'm pumped and excited, so I am getting curious. Okay, so here we are. Your first question, Karima. Give us the newspaper headline of how you would title your untold story. How would it read?
Yeah, I would read Building a Jenga Tower of Hope and Self-Love, one piece at a time.
All right, say that one more time for us.
Building a Jenga tower of hope and self-love, one piece at a time.
Building a Jenga tower of hope and self-love, one piece at a time. All right. Share with us what this headline means to you.
This past few decades that I have been alive, it's been quite of a journey, It's kind of like a Jenga tower, like you're being asked to, I guess, strategize how to build the tower, but then afterwards, when a risk happens or something happens to shake it up, you have to pull it out one piece at a time. But then you realize, okay, well, Jenga tower wasn't just the task, it was the piece by piece partition too, because those pieces include also bigger puzzles that you have to solve in your life. So kind of, made me think it's like that journey to hope and self-love. It's never really stable. It's never, I guess, pinned down. But at the same time, it's also, I guess, like the aspect of being okay with risk and being excited to like have courage and using that courage to fight fears. But yeah, it's just been a very, very shaky past few years for myself, especially after my diagnoses.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. Well, this gives us a lot to think about. So I think without further ado, tell us what your untold story is all about. Give us the who, what, when, where.
Well, the last time I came on the podcast, I spoke about my recent diagnoses. We touched a little bit on toxic positivity, but also, I guess, like me not having the agency to make my own decisions because the community I used to be involved with in terms of my faith, but also like my family taking over my entire life, which also impacted, again, like, my identity and how I saw myself. Ever since
Mm-hmm.
then, though, things have changed significantly. And when I say they've changed significantly, I mean that I'm learning more about, I guess, my attachment style, the trauma that I have from the borderline personality disorder or BPD, and
Mm-hmm.
the mania, and how to like create healthy boundaries where you're able to coexist with someone who means well for you and who does love you, but at the same time without getting yourself suffocated. So I've
Mm-hmm.
also returned back to school in January after taking 2 years off because of my episodes. And yeah, I work in like different capacities in human services. It's been a whole new journey, especially now that I'm professional in the field that tries to advocate for accessibility concerns and neurodivergent peoples. But it's also so taxing sometimes on my own mental health, right? Because you're just like, okay, well, I'm creative. I know how to think in innovative ways so
Mm-hmm.
that we're able to create better programs, for instance, or better solutions for people.
Mm-hmm.
But because of the fact that you're creative, people sometimes don't see the fact that taking a chance on you is important because even though right now, for instance, like neurodivergent people, such as myself, neurodivergent is a term that a lot of people don't know. People who do listen to this podcast, I highly recommend you searching up neurodivergencies and neurotypical, and I'll really explain to you in terms of what it truly means, the umbrella term. But
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of frightening to see how the healthcare system is right now and the education system is right now, not knowing that people like myself, like, will one day need to be in power in different positions so that we can create better levels of change and doing all that while also taking care of yourself, right?
Of course. I'm hearing a lot of themes and I'm hearing a lot of things that have been significant in terms of changes. Curious if that's all related to your journey with the diagnosis since you were first on the show, or if there is something else about your story that you're planning to uncover.
Well, it's connected to the diagnosis, but it's also, I guess, connected to like honing your own inner strength, right? So now that I've learned about my diagnoses the last time I spoke to you, spent the time being involved in various types of therapies and clinical trials and so forth. But now it's more like about how do I connect my spiritual identity with whatever I have right now in this toolkit I have that's filled with BPD and BP1 so that I'm
Mm-hmm.
able to create portals of courage for myself to manifest the life of my dreams.
Okay. Okay. And so, who else is a part of your journey right now with regards to this part of your story?
Oh, my life coach. She's amazing. I've been seeing her for almost 2 years now.
Mm-hmm.
My best friends, who know who they are.
Mm-hmm.
My team, I have a caseworker who's an occupational therapist, and it's lovely. She's been with me for nearly, I guess, a year and a bit now.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I guess, my chosen family. So not just my best friends, but also my chosen cousins and my chosen siblings. They know who they are. Organizations that I've connected to, my mentors. I have a big, big, big village. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I just don't want to name one specific person because they're all so meaningful to me.
Okay. So tell me, what is different about how you are managing and coping?
Oh, yeah. Okay. This is a good question. I guess the difference is that I'm trying to do the opposite now, for instance. Because I have BPD, my emotions are very hot. Hot is a term
Mm-hmm.
that's used in dialectical behavioral therapy when it comes to describing emotions that are intense, such as anger, sadness, hurt, jealousy, fear, all of those
Mm-hmm.
emotions. And when my emotions get too big, they take over my thoughts. They paralyze me. And what I've been doing, what I've been working on is, realizing that I have to give myself a chance, right? I have to give myself a chance to do the opposite or do something that I wouldn't have done in the past. Like, for instance,
Mm-hmm.
people pleasing tendencies. And people pleasing tendencies exist a lot in BPD, especially my BPD, because of creating secure attachment or not having a fear of abandonment. At the same time, people pleasing hides the real me. And when I've done these like certain behaviors, it also takes away my ability to say no and being okay with saying no to circumstances which don't sit with me. But at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
reminding myself that I'm still learning how to make myself my own priority and being okay with taking time with making decisions too, without having in my mind that, oh, this person's going to leave me. This person's going to do this to me. When there's evidence that I have these amazing support networks, these amazing friends, these amazing chosen family that are still there, that still show up for me.
Right.
And it's proof that I'm growing into a more secure person. At the same time,
Right.
still growth and a lot of trauma, right? Like speaking to a friend of mine a month ago, and I saw her after like a year. And the reason why I saw her after a year, Selena, was because I told her, I was like, listen, when I'm around you, I feel like very insecure. And it's not because of you, it's because of the trauma that I carry. Certain aspects
Mm-hmm.
of my life really carry that trauma deeply. And I told her, I was like, listen, the more you stay around me, the more you're going to get hurt. So I can't be around you for you to get hurt. And then I sat down and something that I've really learned and been taught by my life coach is to sit in my emotions. And sit in my emotions is something I would never done in the past because my mom, especially like growing up, she comes from a South Asian Persian background, and coming from, I guess, cultural backgrounds as such, you have to like discard the emotions that you feel that you don't want to feel. And I've been learning that sitting in my emotions is actually, a gift, and it's actually a strategy that needs to be used so that we understand ourselves better and our body understands it better. And
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing a lot of body work and a lot of work around, I guess, like trauma in my body, but at the same time, being able to stabilize my vagus nerve.
So I actually am going to ask you to give your definition of what the vagus nerve is so that people can relate to it as you share more about your journey.
So the vagus nerve is this nerve in our body that's connected from our brain all the way until our stomach, I believe. It really connects with like major organs within our bodies, such as our brains, our hearts, and our entire, I guess, digestive system to
Mm-hmm.
understand how trauma impacts, I guess, different parts of yourself. And because of the way that our body reacts when we have trauma or when we go into like flight or freeze mode, it also
Mm-hmm.
impacts the different parts of our body in terms of how we carry that trauma, how we also get impacted. For instance, for myself, when it comes to like
Mm-hmm.
read a text message or something that's kind of alarming to me, my chest and my stomach get very like tensed, like very, very tensed.
Right.
So, and then all of a sudden my hands start
Right.
getting cold. So I have
Right.
to put that phone away, sit down and engage in my coping strategies.
Right. Well, that makes sense because the vagus nerve, it's the main nerves of your parasympathetic nervous system. The functions are involuntary. So it makes sense that these things start happening to you, that this is how you experience it. And sometimes you can't consciously control when your body starts operating in that way.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes
Yeah.
sense. Right. Okay. And so I'm also curious about, since being on the show previous to where you are now and what you're opening up to, what has been the most difficult for you to contend with? whether it's making peace or just something that's difficult in this part of your journey?
I guess just truly believing like everything will work out. Like truly, like I've created a connection with my spiritual higher being. And I guess just accepting the fact that it will work out and that I am a good person. I have good ethics. I have a community which is so beautiful and so loving. It's just like these are facts, right? Like these are I can see this, but at the same time, my brain cannot believe it. My brain is so traumatized. It's for me to also remember that I have so much trauma inside of my body that's not even just my trauma. It's also trauma through intergenerational trauma. And it's just like I have the task of working on this so that I can be happier with myself, but also at the same time give myself compassion, which is what I'm really, really trying to work on, especially when it comes to like reminding myself that, you know, the reason why things aren't as easier for me than they are for other people is because of my life experiences and what shaped me up.
Mm-hmm.
And also reminding myself to cut myself some slack because of the fact that I have all this work to, you know, to do. And also how I'm not alone in this work. I have a village. I have, you know, the best life coach in the entire world who is amazing. And I also have these other professionals and these other loved ones that believe in me, that believe in my destiny too. So it's kind of just like
Mm-hmm.
how to step back and just take a deep breath and to keep breathing because no one really teaches you how to breathe.
Right. So, Karima, I'm curious about what you still get triggered by. What sorts of encounters have you experienced where you notice, okay, this is what's triggering you?
Well, for instance, I've been sexually assaulted. So I've been sexually assaulted quite a few times in the past. And now when it comes to, I guess, men overall, it's just like, how do you trust yourself to trust someone else like that in an intimate, sexual, romantic way? How do you take
Mm-hmm.
your time without being known as, you know, the woman who has like not these experiences, but also being allowed
Mm-hmm.
to say no, right? And taking your time and not being, I guess, you know, put into a box and labeled as however, like you want to be labeled, which is something I'm really working on, I guess, attracting like relationships or I guess romantic relationships where I am, you know, feeling like an equal. So that's something I'm working on also not reacting on my impulses and taking a moment, taking a breath, 2 days or so. Even if it's, for instance, if it's a conversation, I'm like muting the conversation for a few days so that I can breathe and take in what I want to say without it being too hasty because my emotions are technically, I guess, like a reflection of other people's emotions and other people's attachment styles that were, I guess, hovered onto me, you know? So it's just like
Right.
reminding myself that even though I have these emotions and although I shouldn't be gaslighting myself, at the same time, a lot of people pile their crap onto me. So these are just some things that I'm working on.
Right. And what are some examples of other impulses that you might have?
Yeah, I think my other impulses are like being financially stable, right? Having bipolar 1, like you spend so much money. Like you spend so much money that you don't even realize what's happening with this money. So it's just like being careful of how I spend things, what I spend it on, like I'm trying to have a tracker, for instance, to see it's like how much money I've been spending per week or giving myself a budget and being my own mom and being
Mhm.
Karima, look, this is your budget. Do you need this? Do you really need this? Do you
Right.
have this?
What does it look like when an impulse is like taking over? So, for example, spending so much money, what kind of transaction would you be sort of going all out for?
Earlier this fall, I went to Shoppers Drug Mart and I went to their perfume aisle because I'm creating my own perfume collection. Even though I didn't have like much funds in my account for like I guess like a perfume, I went and I'm just like, okay, there's this new perfume I wanted, and it was like a few $100s, you know, and then I
Mm-hmm.
bought it, and then I walked out the door, and then I spent 5 minutes going, okay, Karima, do you need this perfume? You know, you bought this perfume by impulse. You have the receipt, which is great. You have the receipt, but do you need this? Do you need this perfume? Yes or no? And then I was like, no, I don't need this. And I'm like, okay, do you have other perfumes you can wear? And I was like, yes, I have a good collection. I have like 4 perfumes and they're all pretty great. So I was like, okay, well, this isn't a no in terms of buying this product, but how do you feel if we like gifted this to us like later on in June when we graduate? That way, when we do gift it to ourselves, it's like, okay, you worked really hard to finish your degree, but at the same time, you're giving yourself something, like a treat, when you know that you deserve it. And by then, you'll be able to save up or save aside money for this perfume. And then I do this self talk.
Right. That's an example of how an impulse shows up specifically with spending money. You're finding ways to take responsibility almost immediately, very soon after a transaction happens. It sounds like you've gotten yourself to that place to recognize that, let me see, do I need this? And so you do it in a very gentle and compassionate way, and you're letting yourself arrive to the conclusion that you need to. And then you sort of take the appropriate step to rectify whatever that has transpired.
Yeah. And it's also like another example would be I'm not really allowed to drink caffeine because of the bipolar 1 and the BPD. And so I make my own teas, like my own herbal teas. And usually I take that whenever I have like work, I take it to work. For instance, these past few weeks, I've been like in and out of hospital. And whenever I'm going in, I'm just like, okay, do you really need a coffee today? Do you like coffee? Yes, I like the taste, but do you like the caffeine? No, I don't. It's okay. So what can you do differently when you get the taste of coffee, but you're avoiding the caffeine? It's like, okay, how about I get a decaf instead?
No, it totally makes sense. And it sounds like you're doing it in such a healthy way.
I'm trying, man.
Right. Yeah, it definitely sounds like you've done a lot of work to get yourself in that place where you can connect with yourself and pivot where you need to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Karima, when people come to see me for therapy, people tend to be in one of three places. Some people are getting started where they're just coming in with all sorts of things and they want to figure out how they're going to, move through life and understand things they've already experienced. Some people are in the middle. They might be in the thick of an acute stressor or a certain happening in their life, and they need help to navigate through that kind of muck. Some people are looking back, where they're now looking for closure or wanting to become better versions of themselves. So they would like to work on personal growth so they can move forward. What part of the journey from the story that you've been sharing today, what part of the journey would you say that you are in? Would you say that you're getting started, in the middle, or looking back?
I think I'm in the middle and like looking back because of the fact that, you make like choices and you're just like, okay, how did this serve me? Right. And you're kind of seeing if it really brought you joy or not, or did it bring you clarity, or did it, I guess, like help you, I guess, feel proud of your decisions? Looking back and seeing, it's like, okay, what can I do different next time so that I'm protecting myself? So I feel like I'm in and out of the middle and the last stage. And I'm just really expanding in terms of my spiritual practice and how to also like hone that to like better uplift myself while at the same time challenge like the perfectionism I carry, the aspect of having control over everything, and also like putting pressure on myself. So right now I'm just really learning to being okay with what I made, in the past, what I did in the past, what I did in the past. But at the same time, it's like I shouldn't be carrying myself with so much shame and guilt when now that I look back in the past, before I had the skills in phase 1, was that, like I did what I had to do because I was just trying to survive. And when you're a little girl and you're mixed faith, you're mixed, ethnic, and you're in this community and we're with a mom who is so, so, so religious, it kind of just breaks you apart, right? Because you're just like, I'm just trying to fit in. I'm just trying to be liked.
You were just trying to make sense of your world that was dictated to you. Like, this is your world. This is my world. How do I fit in? How do I make sense of this? How can I operate? So very much survival mode.
More like also, this is my mother's world. And if I'm not a part of this world, she's going to disown me.
Ah, right. So that's where the fear of abandonment comes from.
Yep. And And I also had a
Okay.
dad who had a depression growing up too. So that really impacted me a lot.
Okay. All right. And so, what would you say that has been a really big lesson for you so far?
Big lesson for me so far.
Yeah.
You shouldn't really trust people easily.
So, for you, a lesson for you that you've learned is trusting people too easily is not good for you.
More like, the trust also has to do with expectations, right? Even though, for instance, I have these loved ones who do show up for me, who I can rely on, who can be very protective over me too. But at the same time, like, there's this part of you that needs to also be in alert. And being in alert isn't a bad thing. It just means that you're showing up for yourself. Being mindful of how I see myself, how I love myself, how I see my self image, my self perception,
Mm,
because your self worth, your self value, they're such important aspects of just being you. And for me, that's something that I've been trying to reflect on, and also really trying to integrate within my wholeness.
right. And that's the lesson of how can I accept all these parts of myself? And how can I make sure that I'm clear about what I'm seeing in
Yeah,
myself? Mm, very, very beautiful.
yeah.
Okay. Is there something about your journey that you're grateful for in terms of something you've encountered along the way?
Sometimes the world can feel flat, right? And sometimes the world can seem really three-dimensional. At the same time, just knowing that the universe is full of amazing opportunities, and like I said before, snapping out of that scarcity mindset. So that's just something that I've been really trying to work on and focus on abundance being my birthright,
Hmm.
or baraka, as they would say in Arabic and Farsi.
Say that again, please.
Baraka, or in Tanzanian East African cultures, they say baraka.
I see. So really focusing on the abundance mindset and just embracing that aspect,
Yeah.
embracing the shift.
Mhm.
Okay. So, Karima, I'm curious about how your untold story has affected your mental health specifically. I know that being on the show for a second time, in the first time, there were a lot of different things that we spoke about. And I don't know if you're able to speak a little bit more about how you're trying to figure out how to live your life with illness in a way that's good for you, or if there is something that you might be able to feel comfortable speaking about regarding the manic episodes. What else can you tell us about the impact on your mental health?
I guess the thing is that a lot of people, like when they think about mental health, they forget about the cultural and the spiritual pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily, I haven't been in psychosis since 2022. So I'm very proud of myself for that. So
Right.
when it comes to, I
So,
guess, just like the mania and other aspects, the diagnoses that I have are diagnoses that don't really exist in both sides of my blood family. And it can really make me feel like the black sheep, for instance, because I see a lot of things clearly. And then I have this social work lens and this like business lens, and it makes me think and see things in a more clear manner that a lot of people can't see.
if you're feeling like a black sheep, saying like these diagnoses, they weren't in my genes, did that make you feel lonely at any point?
Yeah, it did make me feel lonely. It made me feel like you can't depend on people who aren't going to understand how you're feeling or make an effort to find out how you're feeling. Like, it's not hard to do so. Like, either you ask, or either you go on Google, you go on YouTube. There's so many different resources out there. And what really would irk me, and it still irks me, is that my mom's side of the family, like to be honest, I don't have any expectations for my dad's side of the family. We're not close. We don't speak. And I'm super grateful that I have a different last name than them, which really, works in my favor. But when it comes to my mom's family, it's very, very displeasing because of the fact that they're all so well educated. They have like
Mhm.
multiple degrees. They've been to med school. They have these master's degrees. They have this all this intellectual stimulation, But at the same time, it's just like, where's your emotional stimulation? Why can't you seem to understand with a humanic point of view in terms of what I'm feeling and making an effort to know or even ask how I'm doing? Like, no one has ever really asked how I'm doing. And my cousins, for instance, who do have such like circumstances or experiences, and when you put mental health on top of that, because you're just like, how do I support my cousin in this way? Even though when I'm dealing with these two diagnoses, thing is, you can't be kind to everyone, even when someone's not being kind to you. At the same time, you're just like, you're not everyone's social worker. You're not even your own social worker. You're your own advocate for sure. Being able to see things in different ways. It's like kind of like a curtain being lifted in front of your eyes, right? Like, it's the cataract analogy. That's what I call it. And, seeing who's truly been there for me has really made me want to believe who truly family is and true family isn't. So this has been a big, big, big impact in my journey, and it still is.
Right. That would definitely impact your mental well-being, because if the family views are so disjointed on how mental health affects a person, in addition to all the other aspects that you shared in terms of cultural values and cultural associations, it is so big and it can be very confusing and difficult to prioritize yourself. Even the ropes that you took to learn to self-advocate, that must have been a journey of its own.
Yeah, it still is a journey of its own.
An ongoing journey.
Just learning, like, well, what is closure? How do you not confuse what you're being offered with what you're worth? How do you stop dwelling on your past and realize that without these mistakes, you wouldn't be able to learn the lesson, to respect the lesson and move on? How do you keep your heart open despite this madness, right? Like, how do you keep loving, remembering that you are worth love, you are worth to be chosen?
Right. And that's the path you're on.
Yep. And trying not to cry as I speak to you.
You're doing a beautiful job articulating it. So I'm curious about, what is your key message to the listeners of our show? What do you want them to know, Karima?
I don't know what I can say to your listeners, but I can definitely say that the block button is a beautiful feature. And if you ever need to use that when you're not being respected, or you feel like you have a lot going on right now, even the mute button is very, very helpful too. Because remember that, you have the power to choose when you want to make your decisions too. And that's something I'm working on. Like, I'm not perfect. Yeah, just hang in there. I'm trying to hang in there too. So hopefully we can hang in there together and hopefully see the rainbow,
Mm-hmm. So the block button and the mute button are important features, and you feel like this is what helps you regain the power to choose and to do so in the absence of guilt.
Yeah. I mean, it's more to do with growth and like investing in something that you see as your worth. Like, for instance, when I mute the people on WhatsApp, you have a feature to mute people. And then you have a feature to, like, I guess, archive your conversations, because everything's turning digital. Everything is digital these days. And myself, as like a late millennial, and seeing all these Gen Zs being on their phones, right? Your lives are on your phone. So it's like, how do you get off your screen? And how do you breathe? How do you breathe outside of being plugged into a phone or plugged into your laptop or iPad constantly? Like, how do you just take that moment to be off those fake UV rays and just feel, like you're around things? That's why I said that I love being around water. I love being around, trees and nature, because it allows me to ground myself. And that's the same thing to do with the mute button and the block button. You're like grounding yourself, right?
Right. It's a moment of pausing, stepping away from all of that stimulation and recentering yourself, finding yourself.
Yeah. And the thing is that, I mean, there's a huge difference between detaching and avoiding. So even being able to check in with yourself and being like, what am I doing at this moment? Am I avoiding or am I detaching? And if I'm doing this, what's going to be the impact in terms of the long run? And what is going to
Right.
be the impact on the short run? Will this be worth it for now or not?
Exactly. You have some really important key messages.
You know, once you've been in so much pain, felt so isolated, especially being a part of communities, you know, and it's kind of just like, you know, an honor to like share this with viewers who are going through similar aspects, or even caregivers or loved ones, right? So
Absolutely.
it's just me feeling like I have to speak this out in, I guess, alignment with what's being manifested into great desires.
Wonderful. So I'm curious, Karima, I'm curious about what is your game changer inspiration that is close to you that reflects your untold story as you've told it today. So is there like an inspirational quote or mantra or book or an individual or an event, something that really spoke to you or speaks to you?
I guess like one thing that I have noticed myself telling myself is breathe, just to remind myself to breathe, because like I said, you don't learn anything about breathing. No one teaches you this unless you like take some classes. You learn about your diaphragm, you learn about your nervous system, you learn about your body. But even just sitting with your emotions and just breathing, that's what I've been trying to do. You know, if you don't have privacy at home, feel free to lock your door.
Slowing down is key so that you can breathe and give yourself opportunities to do that.
But also making this a daily practice.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So tell us, what is a cause or an organization that has been impactful to you on your journey that you would like to give a shout out to? Who are we giving a shout out to today?
We're giving a shout out to Native Child and Family Services of Toronto.
Amazing. Native Child and Family Services of Toronto.
Yeah, when I really, really needed family, after my first episode, when I lost all forms of my community, even my mother's community, I met knowledge keeper Kevin, or Elder Kevin from Native Child,
Mm-hmm.
and they welcomed me with open arms and brought my spirit back to life. And that's why I do work with Indigenous peoples, and it feels like community that I wanted, the family I wanted, and friends, I got them through Native Child. So I want to say Miigwech. I want to say Miigwech, Chi Miigwech, to Sharon Black, to Echo, to Terry Jaffe, to Knowledge Keeper Kevin, all of you, Miigwech, 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 and Bamapi soon.
Beautiful. All right. Karima, how can people connect with you if they would like to? If perhaps, people feel they really want to connect with you in some way, what platforms are you findable on?
I'm on LinkedIn. I like to keep it professional.
Mm-hmm.
My other few accounts are private, just wanting to have my little crew.
Perfect. All right. Well, we've grabbed all of your information and it should be on your show notes page now, so people can click on that and get your information. Karima, guess what? You've just dared yourself to share for another round. Congratulations.
I like your enthusiasm. I miss your enthusiasm.
Oh, goodness. Well, on a serious note, Karima, I would just like to take a moment to express my gratitude for the deep story shared in this space today, not just once, but twice. The ability that you have to dive in with such vulnerability and to be able to tap into delicate spaces within yourself and reveal the process of the mental health diagnoses, the mishaps, and your process to overcome and work through complex illness and rebuild your core is truly inspiring. And I'm truly grateful to have been able to hear and witness your story today. So thank you for the deep conversation and for all the daring and sharing.
Thank you for having me again, Salima.
Wonderful. Once again, Karima, thank you for being part of Dare to Share Your Untold Story and helping to be a voice in breaking down the barriers of mental stigma. To all of our listeners, If you like what you've been hearing on this podcast and you want to be part of breaking down barriers of mental stigma, I invite you to go wherever you are listening to the episode and hit subscribe. Leave us a comment or a review of the episode and maybe how you relate to it. To learn more about what we offer, visit www.daretoheal.co. And if you are feeling ready and brave to share, please submit your story by visiting www.daretoshare.co. Thanks for joining in.